Why am I hearing it twice? That's why
Yeah,
I'm
me
hearing
too.
it twice. I got it. Rookie mistake. Welcome to another edition of Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace. Ladies and gents, we are two retired New York City police detectives with over 20 years of law enforcement. And if you like all things true crime related from that police perspective and an education experience, please consider hitting that subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you will get all things DutyRon and this guy right here, Ed Wallace, when we go live or upload another video. Tonight, we have a special show for you. We got a great guest, Mike King from Profiling Evil. You know, Mike and I have been friends since he started YouTube. He reached out to me, I think, and he'll correct me if I'm wrong, I was one of the first people that he reached out to. And Mike just had a wonderful communication with me, just asking me, hey, what is this thing all about? What do we do here? You know, and I just answered him back, and I you know, the rest is history. We've been friends ever since. Ed, how you feeling? You're back from Africa. You did a little bit of army training, as I say. How's everything going? Your health good? Everybody good with you? People miss you.
Everybody's good. Everybody's good. My dog is so big now. She's we took her to the vet the other day. She is 38 pounds, 5 months old, 38 pounds. So she's going to be a big one. And I'm down the house in Jersey with my wife, my lovely wife, and my dog, and relaxing before I have to blow out of the country again on Monday.
Outstanding. We're going to miss you, but I'm hoping that in Iraq you have a little bit of better Wi-Fi than you had in Africa, and we're going to try to get together in 8 hours, 4 hours. What's a couple hours amongst friends?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Tonight we're going to talk about Dylan Rounds. This is a case, again, like many of the cases, Harmony Montgomery, we're going to talk about a little bit. There's some stuff. There's supposed to be a news conference tomorrow. You know, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on in the true crime world, and as you know, Ed Wallace and I and Mike King on Profiling Evil, we're going to give you the you know, the 411 on what's going on from the police perspective. So listen, Mike is in California. He's on assignment, but he was gracious enough to bless us with his presence. So I'm going to, without further ado, introduce you to our great friend. He shares many of our subscribers. We share many of his. It's like a cross-pollination of goodness. Welcome, Mike, to the program. Thank you for joining. Thank you.
Hey, fellas, thanks for letting me join you. I just love watching the two of you. So to be able to come in and be a voice of reason is going to be wonderful tonight.
Okay. Love that. Love that.
You know, and before we get going, I have Mike King's one of two books. This one here, I'm going to go full screen with it this evening. I know a lot of us, a lot of the true crime enthusiasts, Mike, have this book in hand. I'm going to go solo with it. I have a signed copy from him. I know that some of you guys have gotten it, but I feel honored and privileged to have this. I'm going to dive into it. Mike is going to scold me for not reading the book as of yet. I've had it for months and months. To show you how busy I've been. These are great books. I have both of them, Deceived and She Knew No Fear. Great readings from all of the subscribers and friends I have here. Alicia B told me she read both books. She says Deceived is excellent, highly recommended. There she is, Alicia B. I know she's part of your channel.
Oh, thank you.
You want to talk just a little bit about the books, Mike? I know you love to talk about it.
Well, She Knew No Fear actually started because I spent, like you guys, I spent my career in law enforcement. My great-great-grandmother was murdered on July 24th, 1891. I heard about it my entire life, and I remember my grandfather talking about it. And one day I was driving down the road, and I thought, holy cow, I've been investigating homicides for 10 years. I'll look into this one. And it took me another 10 years, but we finally cracked the case. And the book is about her life, coming across her murder, and the things that we did in order to crack the case. And there were some pretty cool things, including miraculous things. So that was very special to me. And then Deceived, it happened as a result of a cult that I investigated, where literally over 4,000 counts of rape and sexual assault of children occurred. We rescued 32 children in that cult. 30 years later, as you guys know, Dr. Phil surprised me by having me show up on his show one day. I thought I was going for something different. I walked in the room, and there were 8 of the children that I had rescued 30 years earlier that I hadn't seen. And part of all of that was they asked me to please tell the story. And so we did that. And the proceeds from Deceived are going to build a new children's advocacy center, a place where children can be forensically examined. And we're just thrilled. The plans are made. Groundbreaking is going to be occurring in a few months. So pretty exciting.
That's awesome, Mike.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, well, thank you to everybody who's purchased that thing, because that's where the money's going. And like you guys, I mean, you know, we do pick up a little money from these gigs, but we got pensions, we got other gigs that we're doing.
That's right.
And this is all about what we can do to give back a little.
Yeah, it's called Paying It Forward, and we're always here, and then through your channel, I know we do this. It's a part of our, public service. We entered into law enforcement. You have 40 some odd years in it, Mike. Ed and I, I did my 20 and a little bit extra. Ed did, 25, 26 years. We never stop helping people. It's on our bloodstream. This is what we do. It's in our hearts. So
it's in our DNA.
And Ed and I worked years ago before when we were still both sworn, which was kind of fun. So
yeah, that was
amazing. Thank you to everybody who's in the chat and all the replay viewers and everyone who has subscribed here and will continue to subscribe to both Profiling Evil and Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed. We're going to talk, we're going to get right into it because, I promised Mike under an hour, I like to make these things about an hour. That's about as much of an attention span that I have. And at my growing age, an hour, it's a little bit over an hour. It gets to be a little boring. So we're going to talk tonight about Dylan Rounds. Mike, you did a unbelievable thing. You went out 16 hours in your car. Do you want to just maybe set this clip up that I'm going to play? I want the folks here, most of them have seen this. I thought this coverage, and Ed concurs with me, this was some of the most compelling coverage on Dylan Rounds as of yet. We've covered it back and forth. We talked to the parents. We talked behind the scenes with folks. But you gave a vision of boots on the ground and actually gave that landscape. And you went into details with mapping. So I want you, in your own words, to just give a brief overview on what was the thought process and how you got, came up with this, and did you go solo and were you packing? I want to know those things.
So you always know you go packing, because when you go up and talk to some homesteader out in the middle of nowhere, you not only have the car in drive and your foot on the gas and the other foot on the brake at the same time, but I mean, that you never get that out of your blood, do you? But bottom line is, I loved what you guys had been doing. I love the fact that you had Candace on. I love the fact that you're getting information and you're controlling that information in the delivery of it, because the family needs to have a forum to be able to get the information out. And there's lots of yapping going on out there about whether that should happen or not. Families need to be able to do that. They need to feel like they're doing something, because otherwise they're just sitting in the dark. We as cops never tell the family what we're doing other than to say, hey, we're still working the case. And so it's given them a way to do it. But I just kept hearing everybody saying, well, why haven't they just gone out and found this kid? Why haven't they gone out and looked around in the desert and picked him up? And I thought, I've lived here my whole life. When I was a SWAT cop, guys, we used to actually go across the thing called the Lucin Cutoff. And we would we would have to wait for permission from the Union Pacific Railroad. And then we would drive as fast as we could from the east side of the Great Salt Lake to the west side of the Great Salt Lake on a small, narrow set of tracks with a little bit of a dirt road next to it, and try to get across there as fast as we could before the next passing train would come. And then we'd go out there, and it was the perfect place for the SWAT team to blow up things and shoot guns, because it was just nothing but wide open space. And so what I did is I thought people need to see. They need to see when you paint a little tiny square on a map and say, hey, we ought to check that little square area is 1,000 square miles, not just a walk across the park.
Yeah. Yeah, and this little piece that we cut up, I had Josh, come out with some of the content and some of the bonus content that you delivered here in this. I believe it was a premiere upload that you did. I thought it was fascinating. It gave me even as a retired law enforcement professional, a bird's eye view of the lay of the land. And you don't get that too often, delivered in a clear and concise and professional manner. And that's what you did here, minus the car mount that was jiggling a little bit. I got to correct you on that, Mike.
Yeah,
But, you got to step the game up on the car mount. But
yeah.
this was fantastic. Ed, I know you saw it. I shared it with you. Any thoughts on this delivery here?
No, I loved it. The fact that he went out there with his pickup truck, drove around, and I tried to get this out initially when we interviewed Candace, that this is a desolate area. Okay, it's a lot of ground. It's a lot of ground to cover, and a lot of places that people can disappear. Okay, and the people that are out there, some of these people are trying to hide from something.
Yeah.
In many cases, many of them have criminal records, and they're just going out there to get away from it all and to stay away from the general population, if you will. Okay.
Yeah, and I want to add in there is probably some very good people as well in that mix. It's not
absolutely,
all. So,
absolutely.
Again, we have to take it, the good with the bad, but you do have these pockets of folks who want to go and live off the grid, so to speak, and not to have to conform and comply. We get it. Mike, you know it probably better than all of us. But before we play this clip, I want to just say thank you to Police Off the Cuff, retired Homicide Detective Sergeant Bill Cannon, who also, his channel is shared in my shared channels. He is a retired Homicide Detective Sergeant. He ran the A squad up in Manhattan North Homicide. And Bill delivers clear, concise, and professional, valid information on what goes on in a criminal investigation. And I can't say enough.
Bill's amazing.
Yeah. Well, Bill and Phil, here he is. I know I'm going to have to pay him back with a dinner because he sent me 2 $50 super chats. So Police Off the Cuff, thank you for the super sticker and the super chat. The support that you bring to the YouTube true crime community and here on Crime Time with DutyRon is greatly appreciated. Bill, keep up the good work. Let's play this, Mike.
Okay.
I can't overemphasize to the folks. You may have seen this. You may have seen it in its entirety. This is a small piece of some of the best parts of this video. And now the whole thing is great. I'm going to link it down below. I encourage you guys to go over and check it on out. Here's the bonus content, and let's let it play. I'll go full screen with it, folks.
People all around the world are planting sunflowers this week in memory of and as a show of support to Dylan Rounds and his family. His mom is to be commended for coming up with yet another way to keep his story in front of the world. She did so facing tremendous odds, and she continues to fight for exposure in the search for her missing son. I'm really proud of her. Now, many of you were unhappy with the way the investigation's going. I can understand the frustration in not knowing what's going on, but it really seems unfair to me to criticize law enforcement because they haven't shown all their cards. They're not going to show their cards. They shouldn't show their cards. But my experience causes me to believe that they are overturning every stone. And I guarantee that law enforcement hasn't forgotten who Dylan Rounds is. And while the public and the true crime community may challenge how long it took for police to get engaged, I do believe they're actively involved in this case now and going to work on it every single day. Well, I decided last week that I'd spend a day and make the 450-mile drive around the lake into the areas where Dylan lived and get out and travel along the dirt roads. In fact, I spent probably 100 miles of that 400 miles on dirt roads, and the thing took me more than 16 hours to complete. Now, as I was driving, I made some comments along the way, and I thought you might be interested in catching those. So let's listen in as I'm driving about 20 miles north of Dylan's homestead, heading out into the desert. I'm going to be exploring some of the area today. I'm not going to go places where law enforcement's marked it off, but I am going to visit things that are publicly open. And we're going to talk a little bit and maybe share some of this area that I'm driving through, just so you get a sense of not only how remote it is, but how closely connected it is to society. There was great cellular reception out here. This kid and anyone attached to his case law enforcement's going to have good forensics to be able to look into where locations of phones and other things were. I'm going to spend some time and I'm going to drive that 30-mile dirt road, back road, from Montello to Dylan's grain shed and to his trailer, just to give you a sense of the kinds of areas where someone could dispose of a body if they wanted to. As a SWAT officer, our team would come out here on a regular basis and train out in the West Desert because we could use explosives and high capacity rounds in an area where it was safe to do so. This is a remote area. There are outcroppings, mountains, caves, waterways.
Now, I promised I wouldn't stop it, but I couldn't help myself. He's showing some of the wildlife, the indigent wildlife that's out there. I'm sure there was much more that he could have played here, but he's only got 40 minutes to upload a video, put it together. He's got his back office working on this. But this stuff is what fascinated me because I'm a city slicker, right? I am an experienced detective. I know how to investigate crimes. But when you see stuff like this, and this continues on, and again, I encourage you guys to all watch the full video, which is linked down below in the description. Mike, you hit a grand slam with this one. Congratulations.
Well, you know, Ron, and I think it's a really good place to stop because those antelope are about the size of a Dillon rounds. And people are saying, well, you know, just fly over with a helicopter. And we saw Diesel Brothers, Dave run out and look around. Well, you know what? That's all really good, feel-good stuff. But you got to be looking under every bush out there if you're going to really say you've cleared that area. And think about how massive that is and how quickly those antelope disappeared, and we're watching them on the camera.
Yeah, it's amazing. And this thing just continues on with such, small little clips of some of the footage of the lay of the land. I think you even went by actually the grain truck where it was parked and Dillon Rounds and where he was living. And you went about a mile away and spoke to some folks. So we'll let the rest of this play. I'm going to keep us down on the bottom. I like us here. Would you guys be okay with that? You gentlemen approve? Okay, good.
Yeah.
Ditch banks. There are mines that go down hundreds and hundreds of feet. All of these places are places where somebody familiar with the area could dispose of a body and it may never be found. It's less likely that Dillon wandered off from his campsite. There's too much evidence suggesting that that did not happen, but it's still a possibility and one that we can't discount, even without his shoes. We've seen cases over time where people.
Hey, Ron, I'd love to stop there for a sec because that pushes me to a question for Ed. You know, Ed, I don't know about you guys, but we, especially in areas where there is more remote countryside, we see people that get delusional, strip their clothing off, 40-degree weather. They are thinking that they're in heat stroke and they're ripping their clothes off and heading off into the desert. So when I see a set of boots or I see somebody that disappears, you mention that to people, but boy, everyone goes up in arms about this thing. But what are your thoughts, Ed?
You're muted, Ed. You muted the mic. He's going to.
Yeah, that happens all the time. People get disillusioned about, many things can happen out there, whether it's the extreme heat where you get dehydrated and then you become delusional and then you start wandering around and not realizing that you're going into renal failure and your kidneys are shutting down on you because you're dehydrated or whatever the case. And then the opposite occurs. Like, it gets too cold, but you're not feeling that sensation because of medical conditions, narcotics, or any number of things. And then they start stripping their clothing down and they go out there and get hypothermia and die.
And Mike, you mentioned it about the nights being extremely cold and the days being extremely hot.
Yeah, I mean, the desert can get cold. And you think about it, if you're 105 degrees in the daytime, but you're down to 40 degrees or 50 degrees at night, that's a huge temperature swing, especially if in the day you become dehydrated and you start to strip down. And people keep saying, well, again, fly over and just look for a dead body. most people will try to crawl under some brush or something to get to some sagebrush or something else too. So there are just so many variables in cases like this, especially when you introduce the white outdoors.
And then in the indigenous wildlife out there, if a body has died out there, it's not going to last very long in that state.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, we saw the same thing with Brian Laundrie, right?
Yeah.
Everybody was upset because his bones were spread out. Well, predation is what animals do. They grab onto something, they tear it loose, and they run off in the woods to gnaw on it themselves. And those are all kind of difficult subjects for people to hear about, but that's a natural event. And then bones can be displaced by water movement or anything else. And I'll tell you, a small rainstorm in the desert becomes a torrential river.
Absolutely.
And Mike, I think this also could apply to the Aidan Clune situation with the missing.
Absolutely. Great point, Ron.
Which was just a short period of time before Dylan Rounds. And in that same generalized area, the same type of terrain that we're seeing here on this unbelievably awesome video that you came up with. So let's let the rest of this play. And Mike, anytime you want me to stop it, you just chime in.
They've been under the influence of narcotics or drugs, and they've wandered off into the desert and died as a result of exposure. It gets really cold here at night, and it gets into the hundreds out here during the day. So this thing is just wide open for possibilities. I'm going to drive a back road, one that is actually a more direct route. And if you think of
Mike, can you describe, and I apologize, I know this is going to make this longer, just what the folks are looking at there? We see mountains, we see that dirt road. This is part of the 100 miles that you're talking about, I'm assuming, on the travels.
Yeah, everybody that's been getting on and talking about this thing, they're kind of using the Google Street Map to get them from Lucin to Montello, which takes you out to the highway and goes around. But again, there are just so many dirt roads that would make that same trip. And I just kept thinking to myself, I mean, you think like a cop, right? If I'm dumping a body somewhere, I'm not going down the highway where a patrol officer or a deputy might be driving by and pull me over for a broken tail light. I'm going to be out in the middle of nowhere, probably even with my headlights off, driving around at night to go do something. And I don't want to be an instructional manual on how to dump a body, but
yeah. And a lot of that driving out there requires 4-wheel drive.
Yeah.
It
does, because if you have a little rain event, which can happen at any time, you can now be in a situation where you have a little bit of
flash flooding.
Yeah. I want to also add in too, Mike, most of the folks who are who are dwellers of that area, they know where the highway cops and patrol officers hang out, because if you live in the area, you know the patterns of your local law enforcement. So that being said, gentlemen, I didn't plan on this, but I did share the link with Candice Cooley. She is waiting in the green room, and she wants to come on just audio only because she's with her nieces and some family. So she's not in a setup where she can enable the camera. Again, I welcome her anytime that she wants to. She actually messaged me on my phone and said, I have something that I want to add to this. Again, folks in the chat, we're not going to be asking any questions pertaining to the case or the integrity of this investigation. This is, unscripted, unedited. She just popped in and said she wants to come on. Candice, welcome. This is Mike King from Profiling Evil. You know Ed, Wallace, and myself. Yep. Hi, Candice.
Hi. How are you, Mike?
I'm well, Candice. Thanks for having the fortitude to deal with this. I'm so sorry you're going through this and your family's going through it.
Yeah, it truly sucks. But the only way moving forward to find Dylan is if we continue being out in the public. I can answer a few of the questions. The video you just showed, and that is awesome. That is exactly where you were at. I
wanted to ask you, did you see the full 44 minutes of this video, or is this the first time you're actually seeing Mike's coverage?
No, yeah. So I've just seen what you put on, Ron. That's kind of what I've been, but I know it's the same coverage. I mean, there's been so much stupid coverage of people that are in the California desert saying they're out there digging for Dylan. But the video you put on, I can clearly see, a lot of people have said she's never been to Dylan's farm or nobody's been there. I do truly appreciate, because that's a road that leads to Little Pigeon Road, and it's actually the Grouse Creek Road after you get off the highway and you're heading the other direction. I know exactly where you're at, and that's about right before you lose cell phone service. So
Yeah, there is a small section out there where, especially in those river bottoms, where you don't have cell, isn't there?
Yeah, and then you go past the Lucent Pond and you get out of that and you get to Little Pigeon Road, and then you get it all back. So I absolutely, like, that is that first video of that whole desert of all these people that they have put on. I know right where you're at.
Yeah. Do you mind if we play a little bit more of this, Candace? Do you have?
No, go ahead. No, go ahead and play it. I got time.
Okay, good. All right, I'm going to play this. I'm going to let it continue. And Mike, again, I apologize if I'm putting you on the spot here. It's just that this just happened. It just, again, I shared the link with her, and I wasn't sure if she was going to come on, but I think this is great, because she's giving everybody who's watching this and who's going to continue to watch this, and as this video gets out there and people continue to see it, they'll know that this is good, bona fide, verified information to be true and accurate.
About it. If there was something nefarious that happened to this kid, and someone living in Montello was tied to this murder, if it is a murder, then we have to think about, what would they do? Where would they travel? Is it logical that they would get out on a main road? I just passed a sheriff's deputy 2 minutes ago, a road that potentially could have state police, county law enforcement out and patrolling and pull someone over, increasing the risk of the offender getting identified, maybe even with a body in the vehicle. Or is it more likely that he would take a back road, a dirt road from point A? That's why we're going to focus on facts and the things that we know. And hopefully each of you will start to theorize based on what we factually know, not what sounds really kind of intriguing or sensational. And frankly, folks, we're going to just think this thing through and wonder if there are other possibilities that maybe aren't quite as tantalizing as some of these wild rumors that are going around. My hope is that you'll focus on the reasonableness and what's probable, not what's possible. Because
that was the best statement, and I'm going to let that continue, because when you finish this, it just puts this. I couldn't have said this any better. And Mike, I tip my cap to you for this statement. I'm going to put it back just a little bit, because this whole thing altogether just about sums up not only Dylan Round's case, but every one of them. The Gabby Petito case, Orrin and Orson West in California. You have so many areas to go and speculate of what could have happened. But let's take a listen to what Mike says here.
And what's probable, not what's possible, because the possibilities are endless.
Let's take a few moments and retrace what we know. And much of this information, folks, comes from interviews that the family has done, including a recent interview Dylan's mother did on my buddy DutyRon's channel just last night. Ron, you did a great job on that video last night. Thanks for getting this extended coverage. This is a perfect time to point out how good the cellular phone coverage is out in that area. Now, a lot of you have wondered how accurate it could be that far from the populated Wasatch Front, Salt Lake City, Ogden, Brigham City, and on up through there. Well, on this map I'm showing you, you can see where the cell towers are located. And it's really important to note that the height of the Rocky Mountains is so tall, those mountains that border the Wasatch Front, that many of the cell towers up there can also effectively reach out to Dylan's farm. I watched my own cellular signal quite closely while I drove around, just so I could get a sense of how troubling that might or might not be. I only experienced a loss of signal one time when I was in the bottom of a small wash, just a little bit northeast of the Lucin water tank. There have been a number of searches in the area by private parties and by law enforcement, but I've not seen anything that suggests that either of these are being coordinated. And it causes me to think that it's getting a whole lot less likely that an organized search is going to be mounted, or that law enforcement will ever find Dylan through their own searching, unless a suspect or a confidential informant tells them where Dylan's body is.
Now, I'm stopping that right there because this is what a good detective and an investigator would say. This is what Ed and I have been saying on Crime Time with DutyRon. We concur wholeheartedly with that statement because, Mike, as you know, 40 years of law enforcement experience, that statement couldn't be any more valid in this particular case right now. Any thoughts on that?
Can I chime into this one?
Go ahead, Candace.
So, Mike, I'm going to answer you specifically when you say, and I agree with you, there's a major state highway out there, and you would think law enforcement should be out there, but I am telling you, law enforcement on both sides of the county has called that the armpits of the county, and they want nothing to do with it. So no, there was never law enforcement out there. And even in the beginning, when I started screaming, there was still minimal law enforcement. When we had over 350 people out there looking that first Saturday after Dylan went missing, we had no help from Box Elder. We had no help from anyone. Law enforcement, my husband and I, on Monday, the 28th, when I filed the missing persons report, we actually banged on the door of the sheriff's office in Park Valley. And he wasn't home, and he showed up about 5 hours later, and the first sheriff showed up like 3 hours. So I get what you're saying, like it should be a well-traveled path, but I'm telling you, Elko County and Box Elder County do not care. It's the armpits of their county. There is meth labs out there. There is more stuff that goes out there that we found that they know, and I will stand by that even after we find Dylan. At least it's not in the city, right? It's not in Brigham City. It's not in Elko. It's shoved to the back burner. I will never stand down to that. Right. So no.
I think, Candace, I want to interject something here. I think what he was saying on that clip that we just showed, and again, this is just 13 minutes of a 46-minute video. He was just saying that he personally saw what he saw in his travels. He wasn't saying that it was a well-policed area. Nobody's disputing that.
Yeah, they're never out there. That's what it took us screaming to get them out there because it's just kind of the people they dismiss.
Right.
Let them take care of themselves.
And Ed and I had that conversation with you early on in this case on the first interview. And the first thing Ed said to you is, do you have an attorney? Not because you would need one for yourself, but you needed to have someone advise you on the do's and don'ts, or what happened, good, the bad, and the ugly, that you can get it professionally from someone from a from a lawyer's point of view, not a police point of view. Mike, any thoughts? I know you want to chime in on this.
Well, no, I mean, I think it shows that there's a disconnect, Candace, between your family and the sheriff's office. And it shows one of the weaknesses we have in law enforcement. We have some jurisdictions who have figured out, and they have crime analysts. I mean, sorry, not crime analysts. They have victim advocates who are in a place where they can work more closely with the family. The really tough news is that you need to know that they're working, but they can't tell you what they're doing. And that's a really fine line that law enforcement works. And so the investigator needs to almost separate themselves from that interaction and try to get somebody who can do more of that interaction with the family and make sure you know that they're still working on things. And that's why I'm just so proud of you for continuing to bang the drum and look for ways to keep Dylan in the public eye. But the thing I like about what Ed and Ron have suggested with getting an attorney or someone to represent you with the sheriff's office is also, it might mean more to your part of the investigation to have an intermediary that can be between you and them, especially if it's become adversarial in any way, because they're trying to do their thing. I promise their goal is to find Dylan and to solve this case. Your goal is to find Dylan and hopefully see this case brought to resolution. But because of the emotion involved and stuff, we sometimes get these burrs under our saddle that are just really difficult to get past.
And I think the advocate would be someone to maybe push law enforcement to be held accountable a little bit more, not in the public eye, but to the family, the communication. It opens up that line. Ed, any thoughts?
Well, well, Mike said earlier about possible and probable. And I get that all the time, and my testimony, and I tell the defense attorneys that he says anything is possible, but we live in a world of probability, and you have to say, is it probable as opposed to possible? Okay, and I abide by the Occam's razor, and I keep it simple. The truth is usually the easiest of explanations. The more convoluted and twists and turns that could get involved in, the more likely it's not going to be the truth. And we're all in search of the truth here. Okay, so the truth is, Dylan can be anywhere out there, and only the people who are involved in this know where he is. Okay, and as Mike said, it's law enforcement's job now to try to identify the players and get one of them to give up the information. Yeah. Okay. And that's going to be the best way that this is going to get solved, because of such extensive land out there. It's just almost physically impossible to conduct enough searches, whether on the ground or in the air, to find a body out there. Yeah. Okay. I mean, the odds are stacked against you. Let's just put it that way. The odds are stacked against that type of find. It's more likely it's going to be resolved by law enforcement identifying the right players and getting one of them to give it up.
And this is the most uncomfortable conversation to have with a victim's family, with Candace being here to talk about this. But in the private conversations that we had, Ed, you and I have spoken with Candace behind the scenes. We were trying to be as real as we can with this, and it's not to be, mean or mean-spirited. It's the truth. And Brenda, the question of would Candace be able to review all of the police case files if a lawyer was involved? Absolutely not. No. Police will not do that.
No, nothing's been released. There has not been a single. It's an ongoing investigation, and there has been nothing released.
Yeah,
and we can't get them.
Right, and it's frustrating, but that is how it should go, because I was going to have Bill Murray jump on with us, but again, he's a criminal defense attorney, and he could say this is a dream of a criminal defense attorney for law enforcement to release too much, because then when it comes time to prosecute, they have a field day with all of this. We've seen this in other cases, and I don't even want to mention them, but we've seen this in other cases, and we know that we're all human beings, on the law side, on the prosecutor, the prosecutorial side, and mistakes get made. But when those mistakes get made, it's the difference between a guilty verdict and a person going free. I want to play the rest of it. Go ahead, Ed.
Well, quickly, we have the tip line. Somebody posted the tip line to Box Elder County. Please, folks, don't call them, inundating them with questions, or don't call them unless you have a legitimate tip. Right. Okay, don't bog down the investigators with things that are not going to help the case. Okay, so please, don't pick up the phone just to say, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? Because that's not going to help. It's only going to hurt.
Right.
I agree with that.
Yeah, wholeheartedly. I think we all agree with it. Again, people in chat, our focus and our objective is not to interview potential witnesses or anybody who could be a potential suspect. So interviewing Kurt Wadsworth and all of these players that we've mentioned millions of times on these Chase Venstra, all of these folks, that's not the mission statement of a true crime YouTube channel. Someone that's trying to put out the missing persons, the victim's name, their family, putting out information. All of that stuff is for the active folks that are working. So let me just play the rest of this, because Mike shows us some of the mapping that he did, and this was also another aspect of fascination that drew me to want to actually highlight this whole thing here on my channel. And Mike, thank you for being gracious, letting me play this stuff and letting folks see it. And you can also give them the behind the scenes and narrate as well. And again, this is fascinating stuff here.
Now, I thought you might be interested in just how big this area is, so I created this map to show you how I would propose that they search the area. Let's look at that. This is the area, and on this map, you can see the route that I drove to go around the lake. And I went up through the north part of the state of Utah and down and across through a place called Park Valley and down into where Dylan lives. It's about in this area that I recorded that first video recording in my truck. As I neared the exit from the highway onto a dirt road to go out to Lucin, I noticed a couple of things that were really interesting. Number one is the old train bed and the fact that the area is no longer occupied. There are a few homesteaders out in the area, but that's about it. But in this area, the area is massive. There are literally hundreds of square miles of area that need to be searched. And it is rugged country, as you can see by looking at this map. Called my friends over at Black Sky, and I had them send a satellite over and capture an
Hey,
image.
Ron, and if we could stop right there for a second, just to bring that back 5 seconds.
Okay.
That, folks, is a 425-mile chunk of land that I just highlighted there. 425 square miles right there. So when you're hearing people say, "Why don't you just go out and look around?" Keep that in mind, that this is a batch of countryside.
All right. This is what you wanted me to put up there, right? This is the 425.
Yes, yeah, and you can actually see that up in the far right corner. I don't have my glasses on, but 423 square miles or something right there.
423 and a half square miles. Yep. It's fascinating. And thank you to Black Sky for putting that up for you. And
I had them send.
Thank you for, this just gives such a great bird's eye view of the whole, the lay of the land. I'm going to just let us play because we're almost done.
The satellite over and capture an image of Dylan's farm on the right, and on the left, the grain shed. And you'll notice it's about 5 miles between those 2 points. I did this for a couple of reasons, because it gave me an idea of before and after, but it also helped me to understand the terrain on the days that Dylan disappeared. You can see that there are a lot of ravines and other places where this young man could have disappeared or been buried and never seen again. When I was finished checking this area, I realized just how massive it was. I hope looking at this map helps you. I've heard people on some YouTube channels claiming how many sex offenders live there. I've heard that there have been as many.
This is important because I brought this up in the beginning, and I think it's really important that you did this research, Mike. So I'm just gonna cue it back a little bit, and folks, just pay attention to this, what Mike King brings out here.
Channels claiming how many sex offenders live there. I've heard that there have been as many as dozens of sex offenders living there. When I checked on the Elko County Sheriff's Office website today for the number of sex offenders living in the city, and in Truth Finder, a program that I use a lot here at Profiling Evil, I discovered that they are only showing one sex offender living in the city. But I did find another record that indicated the location of 4 sex offenders as shown on this map here. But 4 even is not that many, and it certainly isn't as egregious as some people have tried to make it sound. Now, if they can show that that's true, I would certainly retract that. But again, going to an official source, the Elko County Sheriff's Office, today I only saw 1 sex offender listed in the city of Montello, Nevada. I find that kind of significant. Well, it was clear,
Ron,
as
I think that's a great place to just stop and just kind of to reiterate that. According to an official document, the county's registered sex offenders, there's only 1. I found some historical data that put 4 there. Could there have been more or fewer? Absolutely. But all we have when the 3 of us look at cases is we look at official things. And that really goes a long distance from some of the yapping that I've heard out there about how bad this is. But the other thing to think about this is that we see all across the United States, because one of the things I've done is I've mapped out registered sex offenders in almost every community across the United States as I've worked with law enforcement trying to handle their real-time crime analytics. And what we find is, number one, a registered sex offender that comes out of prison, doesn't have a job. They're trying to find a place to live. A place like Montello is a place where they can go out, start working on a dry farm, or work for somebody for just hourly wage, or get paid under the table. Sometimes it boils down to simple economics of why we see some of these folks that are in this kind of economic or socioeconomic position lumped together. It's not because there's a cult of sexual abuse going on out there. Now, could be happening, but the bottom line is we got to look at this thing with a lens of common sense. And I felt like we were kind of losing control in that area.
I agree 100%. And Ed, Ed, you did so much research on some of the coverage. Your head was exploding. And you know,
Oh, yeah.
we don't want to, you know, obviously we don't want to kind of grandstand these folks or give them any kind of a highlight. It's just something that's so important that I always reiterate is that you want to try to stick to, and listen, there are some great YouTube true crime creators that are not retired law enforcement. I'm going to say that because I have many friends along the way here. You know, I know you're good friends with Linda. I am too. You know, there's many people who put out a very good, valid information, timelines, and things of that nature. We're here to kind of give you the perspective of what it takes to actually hook these guys up and put handcuffs on them. And we're not giving away trade secrets, but we're trying to keep you guys focused and educating you on how difficult sometimes and how many challenges that there are on law enforcement and how diligently they work behind the scenes, and they take some of this stuff home, they bring it home to their families. And, you know, most of these guys and gals are family people, you know, so we take this stuff to heart. But the families like Candace here, they get frustrated because the lack of, listen, if these folks would come out and say, hey, we'd love to tell you what we know, but we don't want to jeopardize this thing, I think Candace would be in a better place, and many others, like, you know, many other families that we talk and deal with. But they're not, sometimes law enforcement aren't the greatest communicators because they're busy working on the cases and they don't have time to be empathetic. They should, but sometimes they get so wrapped up in the investigation and their bosses are telling them, do not say a word. They're afraid. They're scared. And they don't want to be that guy or girl that gave the information and then somehow it leaks out. I don't know.
And we're not here to solve these cases. We're here to give the general public our law enforcement perspective from our years of experience, and, you know, what this means. We're here to educate,
Right.
Okay, and I'm here specifically for forensics and so forth. But we're here to educate and tell you, okay, this is what this could mean. This is what that could mean. Okay, so, you know, we're not trying to solve the case. You know, but we also want to give these victims an avenue to keep their loved ones' names alive and out there, so that the public knows what is going on.
Exactly.
Okay, and could help in that regard.
Yeah, exactly. And Candace, I think, you know, you could stop me if you want, but I think that you and I had a conversation today and we talked about some stuff. Ed is a crime scene expert. You know, he's evidence collection, you know, all things CSI. Ed, can you talk a little bit, and Candace, you can stop me if you want, about luminol and the, you know, collection of blood evidence. This is it's out there. It's already out there. It's not anything that's new information. But could you walk us through, you know, in layman's terms, how that process works and how complicated and what it entails?
Well, in forensics, we use chemicals like luminol or blue star, which is the newer version of it. When we suspect blood had been at a crime scene, had attempted to be cleaned up, we can't see it with our naked eye, so the blood is what we call latent blood. So in order to try to find that, and if we have indicators that blood may be present or an attack may have occurred, say in a specific location, and then cleaned up, we will document that location with photographs, a sketch, and then what we'll do is we'll set our camera up on a tripod and we'll mix the chemical, either blue star or luminol. And what happens is we shut the lights off and we spray this chemical in the area where we suspect blood may be present. And if blood is present, okay, it will adhere to the heme in the blood that's still there and cause a chemical luminescence and glow blue for as long as we keep spraying the reagent. Now, it's an aqueous solution, and so you don't want to continue to spray too much of this stuff because it's diluting what little is left, okay? And you want to be able to sample it and get genetic markers. Now, it is a presumptive field test because luminol blue star can react with copper and other metals and solvents and commercial cleaning materials, okay? So just because it does create a luminescence, it doesn't mean, in fact, it's blood. So that's that's why after we document it, we want to sample it and get it to the lab as fast as possible and see if they can find genetic markers, DNA, extract it, and confirm that it is, in fact, blood, and then try to get a genetic profile.
Wow. That's fascinating. And Ed, always educating and always, getting the true crime community on level ground. That's the process. That's how it's done. Ed, can I be bold enough to ask you how many times you have conducted that process yourself in the New York City Police Crime Scene Unit?
Actually, hundreds of times. In fact, I actually went into a court and got a warrant based upon a luminol test that we did to go into an apartment. See, people think they clean up everything, but they really don't. Okay, and it's the expertise of the individual doing the process and doing that work to show where we can find it.
Right. And Candace, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that you weren't actually in, and here I am messaging you on the phone. I was like, hello, I'm here.
So Ed, does it test positive? Does it test positive for sweat? Or
no, not really sweat. It has to have heme in it, hemoglobin.
Okay, that's all I need to know.
Okay. Candace, any other? Because I text you. You can ask Ed anything. Do you have anything?
Yeah, so that was my main question. Because I've always heard, and Ron and I talked about it today. It's a positive or a negative. It hits or it doesn't, and that was my only question on that.
Well, like I said, I could spray it on a copper pipe and get it to glow. I can.
I'm not. Yeah, there's no copper. So
I could spray it on bleach and get it to glow.
Right.
There are other cleaning fluids that would give you a positive, but it's not. That's why it's considered a field presumptive test.
It's not going to be somebody's sweat or somebody's boogers to make it an easier term. So yeah.
She said somebody's boogers, for those of you in the back room that didn't hear that. Yeah, I mean, listen, again, anybody that's involved in something like a missing persons case, and Candace with her son, these are all intricate parts of what an investigation entails. And, getting definitive answers to specific processes, most people don't have that. They don't get that. They're just left to try to figure it out. So that's why I think like shows like Mike King's Profiling Evil, Crime Time with DutyRon, there's just a few of us out here that are giving our police perspective to help not just educate the audience, but to help the actual families understand. And Candace, I know you're not here to give an infomercial, but it's a help to actually get you to understand.
Well, and it truly is, and none of us know as a family. And Mike, you going out there and you driving the terrain and seeing all this crap that all these people are putting out, like I could tell you right where you were, and so I appreciate that. Yeah. Like that's amazing. You went out and actually drove where my son was at. Most of these people, they just go out into a desert and dig and say, "This is where we're going to find Dylan." It's not even the right state, but I could see right where you were at. And that's amazing. And thank you for taking your time and bringing it more into the public's eye, because that's what it's going to take. That is what it's going to take to bring Dylan home.
Kudos to you, Mr. Mike King. And I'm honored to, again, call you a friend before this incident happened and going forward. I'm looking forward to, more collaborating, more, as we say, cross-pollination of the folks who subscribe to us, because the more reach that you can get and have people, I'll say this, Mike, the live chat, I'll go back and occasionally look at yours and mine. And in our live chats, I see the most educated YouTube audience because of what we're putting out to them. So the questions that are being asked,
and civil, Ron, the most civil chats. Right. I'm just
shocked at some of the deplorable things that are going on out there. And frankly, how do you do something constructive if you're yapping about things like that?
Yeah. And it doesn't help at all to find kids like Dylan Rounds. And I call him a kid because I'm almost 60 years old. So, yeah, he's a kid to me.
I still call him a kid.
Yeah. So when you have situations like this, and we don't have to highlight all the time Dylan Rounds here. I could talk about this on numerous other cases that you and I have covered together. And
yeah,
you know, the circus, as I call it, that swirls around it. Those folks are not really thinking about there's real people behind this, and you're hurting real people. And that's where I draw the line. And like I said, there's many, many good YouTube true crime creators that aren't from the field of law enforcement or the district attorney's office. You know, I have Joe Murray, who's my good friend, retired police officer, criminal defense attorney. He has a YouTube channel, and all he does is give the do's and don'ts of, you know, what you should and shouldn't put out. He is on both sides of the fence. He was a cop at one time, and now he's a criminal defense attorney. So it's such a great resource for us to have. Mike, would you mind if we played the rest of this? And Candace, it's only about 2 more minutes.
Yeah, that's fine. You're fine.
Yeah. I mean, I feel so strongly about this, and I think that this is just great coverage.
Dylan's farm and the area where he was last seen, that again, there are literally hundreds of square miles of open countryside, back roads, ditches, crevices, outcroppings, hills, mountains, valleys, abandoned mines, and many other places where a body could be hidden. Just to the south of Dylan's last known location, there's a local attraction called the Sun Tunnels. They're pretty cool. They actually are this artistic work of a woman named Nancy Holt, who died about 8 years ago. The 4 concrete cylinders are about 18 feet long and 9 feet in diameter, but they're arranged so that you can look through them in a tunnel, almost like a telescope. And there you can peer through those 2 tunnels, and during the summer and winter solstice, see the sun perfectly in the middle. I stopped to look through the tunnels, and while I was peering through them, off in the distance.
And now there'll be the last time I stop it. This is where he speaks about the folks who, I'm sorry, Mike. This is where he speaks about the folks who are just a short distance away from Dylan Round's location. Now, I'm not going to ask Candace if she knows of these folks because, again, we don't want to get into that back and forth. But Mike, I thought this was fascinating that you were able to see these folks watching you, and then you went over and had a conversation with them. I know you didn't interview and interrogate them. You just went over to just see, hey, what's going on? And let's listen to what Mike has to say here. This is great.
I noticed some off-grid homesteaders who were watching me rather closely. So I decided to drive over and have a chat with them. I pulled up, and after a little bit of small talk about a small cabin that they were building, I asked them specifically about Dylan. I was pretty surprised when they said that nobody had asked them about the case, and they hadn't been approached by anybody searching or anything else in the area. Now, this is less than a mile from Dylan's house. They also mentioned that they hadn't heard anything suspicious or didn't hear anything suspicious on the night that Dylan disappeared. We concluded our rather short chat, and I got to say, they weren't really friendly, but they still stopped and talked to me. But as I was preparing to drive away, the woman said, quote, "We're sure he was murdered out there somewhere," close quote, offering no explanation for the comment. Well, as I drove away, I was watching him closely through my rearview mirror, and I thought to myself, it's really unfortunate that law enforcement hasn't figured out how to leverage the local community, the true crime community, and all these people who just want to help, people who want to get out and even help on a missing persons case. You know, I created a simple grid map, a place where law enforcement could go in and assign people certain areas to check. And as those areas are checked, it could be checked off and cleared on a map so that they knew every single area that was searched.
Okay, so then there it is. Thank you, Josh, for putting that together. Mike, I can't overemphasize how impressed I was with that coverage, and I know Ed was as well. Candace got dropped off of the live. What'd you think of that coverage, Candace?
Yeah, it's great coverage, and the one thing that we haven't put out yet. So we've had a team of people from Logan and some from Ogden. So every mine in that area has been searched by volunteer, professional. These are guys that go down to the underground water caves in South America. So every mine has been searched.
That's great.
Every cave has been searched. And this guy has been so awesome. He's volunteered all of his time and taken his buddies, and he's got all the proper equipment. Like the one mine he repelled down into over 200 feet.
Wow. Oh.
Oh yeah, I'll tell you what, guys. I've been. I mean, we used to rappel down into those mine shafts during training time at a time when I was much thinner and younger, and I'll tell you what, those things go hundreds of miles down, and inside the bottom of those are small ore cars and railroads and places where they go back in hundreds and hundreds of yards.
And I 100% agree with that. But there was nobody within the range of Dillon that's a suspect that could absolutely ever do that. The only ones they didn't go into, and there was 11 they didn't go into, and that was because they were so caved in they couldn't even get past 8 feet.
Wow. So there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that folks.
And like I said, this is just a good civilian who had all the equipment, and his team had the equipment. I shouldn't say his team, I should say his friends, and that's what they do for a hobby, and they have searched every single mine.
Right. Mike, I think I get the angle that you were going with on this video is it's fascinating to us because when we do our investigations, Ed can tell you this, there's a checklist, and we start from the beginning, from the ground zero where the incident alleged to have been occurred, and we work our way out. And for the folks to, him to approach them that are just a short distance away, for them to say, well, nobody came over and asked us anything, nobody questioned us, nobody, that is troubling because investigation 101, and you don't have to be a rocket science to figure this one out. You have to eliminate folks in these investigations, and that's why some of them take so long. But you need to knock on doors, and in this case, go to the homesteads and speak to everybody and anybody. And if it's under 50 people, it makes it a lot easier, because
you're right. And the thing that we don't know is if they told me the truth. So,
correct.
Right.
Again, because they're not the friendliest folk out there in some of those places. When somebody they don't know pulls up, I mean, they're off grid for a reason.
Right. Exactly right.
Exactly.
So yeah, in any investigation like this, you start off with where was the last time and place that Dillon was seen or heard from, okay, and that's your starting point, okay. This is the last contact, okay, and then you move forward from that point. And we use technology as much as possible in terms of triangulation of cell phones and pings and things like that, but. There's no getting around. You have to burn up some shoe leather.
Yeah. The gumshoes have to get put on, and you got to go out there and knock on doors and question people.
What do we used to say? We called canvassing shaking hands with doorknobs.
Pretty much. Investigating missing people in concrete jungles and some of the, we did have some areas that have land mass up in Staten Island and, up on the border of the Bronx. Mm-hmm. But the majority of what our investigations are going through, 1,000 apartment buildings. And that in itself takes days to go to each and every door, teams of detectives. But I envision it no different here because you still have to go to a command center and put up on an easel or however they're doing it. These are the folks that we have to go and visit. And if those folks weren't visited by the investigating branch, whether it's the FBI or Box Elder or a combination of both, because I remember that the FBI used to go to us, hey, even we NYPD 40,000 strong, hey guys, go over and canvass this area, 10 square miles, and I want you to talk to every person over there, and then report back to us. So sometimes that's how the feds did it with us, but it is what it is. It has to get done. So it's just important. I want to go to the chat because there's so many great people. The joy catcher, Lucretia. Good to see you. She says, you can tell you gentlemen loved what you've been able to make a career and then take pride in it. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. We love it. Thank you so much for being here and hanging out. Huda, thank you for being here. And she says, could it be that the FBI told the neighbors not to talk about the case? Yeah, anything's possible. But those folks probably would have said, oh, yeah, you know, the FBI was out here and talked to us. They were shaking up the tree over here. You know, they might have said something like that because Mike probably didn't come across to them like he was trying to investigate anything. He was just like, hey, I'm just riding through. I just want to see you guys, right? I mean, that's the approach I would take, you know, not trying to be official.
You know, remember a lot of that land out there is these people are freeloading on. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not their land that they're homesteading on. All right.
Correct.
So they're like, oh, who's this guy? Why is he asking about this shelter we're building here? All right. So, you know.
We have the yarn community is watching us too. That's from our good friend over on Stitch and Crime with just so many great people that come out and watch us, and we're so thankful for it. Tony D is from EquiSearch Midwest. He had a great recovery on drone searches in the state. I believe it was the state of Kansas. We're going to talk about that probably on our next live stream. But Tony and Twyla went up and did some drone footage and did some searching via drone. Tony was the drone operator for EquiSearch Midwest, and they had a recovery. They brought someone home to their family. So kudos to you, Tony. Keep up the great work. And as we say, you're doing God's work. So we appreciate you. Trucker Steve, over the road trucker, he's bringing us our food and cargo and things of that nature. Trucker Steve, thank you for hanging out.
Dr. Pepper.
There you go. Candace, do you have anything for these gents before we wrap it up? I want to give you the floor.
Yep. No, once again, I just wanted to say thank you. Your whole community has been amazing in support. We just got to wait. We got to wait. And I know law enforcement's doing what they should be doing now. And that's been amazing. We just got to wait. I don't even know what else to say. I'm just in this limbo.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at. I'm in limbo.
Well, you know that you have the support of us here.
Yeah.
Mike, with your permission, I'll share her information with you and vice versa.
Yeah.
Sure.
You know,
Sure.
you can
Yeah. And I want to scream and I want to yell and I want to keep chewing, excuse my language, ass, because I won't give until I know what happened. There is no way I'll ever give.
Yeah, well, amen to that. Any good parent would do what. And Ed, you said it so well. I think it was our first live stream. You said, "Listen to this woman. This is what somebody who truly cares about their son or daughter or their loved one, and this is what this is how you're supposed to be."
Right.
I think
this is the normal reaction, as opposed to some of the other cases we've highlighted in Tennessee or California.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know what the normal reaction is supposed to be, because
You're the concerned, loving parent. You're the concerned, loving parent who will move heaven and earth to try to find their missing loved one.
I'm just pissed, and I will find Dylan, and that's where we're at.
Kudos to you. I want to just say thank you to everybody who watches the replay, who has left kind comments in the chat. You guys in the chat have been just so complimentary to not only our guest, Mike King, but also first and foremost to the victim's family here, Candace Cooley, that's Dylan's mom. Those of you showing love and support. She actually became a channel member tonight before we went live. So thank you for becoming a part of this community. I was shocked by that.
That's awesome.
I will follow it. I'm gonna go on with Missing in America. I got to get my background checked, and I will help other mothers go through what I went through.
Kudos to you. That's
I can't imagine. I have family support. I have huge support. I can't imagine going through it without support.
Yeah. Look at some of these comments here. Love for you, Candace. Girl Friday says prayers for you, Candace, because you're a fighter. Stay strong.
Yeah, you're going to bring Dylan home.
Yeah. Such lovely comments. And I'm honored to have amassed this community along with some of the greats like Mike King and some of the others that are out there. Police Off the Cuff has a great community, and Bill brings it to you every day, sometimes twice a day. So kudos to everybody who is chiming in here. And Mike, I'm going to give you the final thoughts, or final last words on Dylan Rounds and some of these other things. We didn't get to talk about Scott Peterson. Too bad. I wanted to talk about it. I had a little folder set up for it.
Well, that's we're gonna have you and Ed on my show, I think, next. So that'll be great. And Candace, Ron and Ed and I have had the chance to work with a lot of families. Sadly, I say this probably too often, but in the United States, 875,000 Dylan Rounds happen every single year, and statistically, 87% of those are going to come home, but that means 104,000 families are going through every single year what you're going through. The difference is some families, like Ed mentioned, don't stand up. They just kind of lay quiet. You join the ranks of a David Robinson, who we've helped and set up grid mapping so that he could go out and systematically tear apart the desert west of Phoenix. You join the family of people, not the family of people who go out and look for Suzanne Morphew. And we were able to help 700 searchers look and systematically pick apart different parts of the countryside. And so I hope you don't stop. I was so impressed that with your vision of the sunflowers and the fact that I don't care if it was a sunflower or if it was, Dr. Pepper's, you got people talking about Dylan all around the world, and you got to keep doing that. And know in the back of your mind, as frustrating as it is, that if other cops are like the three of us, and I believe they are not sleeping well at night trying to solve this case. And it may not happen as fast as you want. It may not ever happen. But I just want you to know the kinds of cops that we worked with, and I think the kind of cops we were would never forget this. And if I were to ask Ed or to ask Ron, name the 3 cases that still haunt you, I guarantee there are at least 3 cases that still haunt them. So thanks for what you do, and to all the people out there who support us and give super chats and other things. I watched what Ron did with your family the other night, Candace, to pass through some money and to add some money. I see the honorable YouTubers doing that. Now, others, they should make a living out of this if they can. It's a lot of work to put a YouTube channel together, and I don't discount anybody for making some money along the way. But you really see the cream rise into the crop with people like you, Ron, that push the money where it should be going, and keep enough to keep driving fancy cars or something.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Again, like you said, Mike, I mean, I can't agree with you more. We are helping people in our retired lives because that is part of what we have in our hearts. And that's where this comes from. It comes from a good place. It's not all about making the money, because you can't take that money with you. And at the end of the day, when I can have folks send in super chats, or like criminal defense attorney Joe Murray sent a $500 super chat, I matched it and I put in to make it $801 to the significance of Dylan's birthday, to signify the actual date. And I thought it was a great thing to do. It was just an idea, and again, Ed, I want to give you also a little bit of something for Candace. You want to just put something on out there, Ed?
No, just stay strong. You're doing the right thing. You're keeping your son's name out there in the public. You're making sure nobody forgets that he has not been found yet, and we won't stop. The public and so forth won't stop until your son is found.
No, I appreciate it, guys, and I won't either. We will find Dylan one way or another.
Yeah. Amen to that. And we're going to keep going. We're going to keep covering this case, and good folks like Mike and myself and Ed, and I know Police Off the Cuff, he had you on with him too. We're going to continue to talk about this and many other cases. We have EquiSearch Midwest. We got, I thought that was a great thing that we got them together to come out and try to do some drone searching for you. And they're not going to give up on it either. If there's more of a need for them to come back out there and revisit things, Mike can do some mapping. We can all put ourselves, our heads together and put some work forward. And Mike driving 450 miles, a 16-hour drive. That's just unbelievable. I commend you for it. So thank you, everyone, for joining. I'll end with all of us here, as I always like to end these. Huda, thank you for that super chat as well. Thank you, DutyRon, for helping all the families, especially the California City boys and Dylan. Listen, I won't stop until I take my last breath, and I know Mike and Ed feel the same way. That's why we're here. We're not here to become rich. We have our pensions. We have jobs. We do our stuff. But yeah, we're putting the victims, the families at the forefront, and I'm looking forward to having more of these kind of conversations and educational live streams. So God bless the world. God bless the United States of America, and God bless each and every one of us here in the chat, but especially all the victims of crime and their families. We want to support them. They need us now more than ever. Let's get behind them. Let's send them prayers, strength, and positive vibes. As always, support these people. Your actions, the things that you do, they don't forget it. They don't forget it. And Candace is here because she knows that this community and the folks that we've amassed here really care about her son. And that's what this is about. Thank you guys. Thank you guys for listening. Good night from New York City, and Mike King from an undisclosed location in California, and Candace in Idaho. Good night, folks. Thanks for joining.
Guys.
Thanks, everyone.